everyone, welcome back. I'm your host, the Dread Pirate Space Buns, and I have a co-host today. His name is With the Flow, and he hosts Let's Think Geek here on YouTube. And I'll do my best to figure out links, but more than likely they'll go down there. He runs a really cool show, though, so...
Thank you so much for having me. It has been a ton of fun to get to work on this whole project with you, to delve into this more. A lot of fun getting to just, I'm excited to get into this with you. So where are we starting? Where are we kicking this journey off?
Alright, well first I thought we would talk about why we're even here talking about Tiger King, because I know it doesn't have really anything to do with what I normally do, except for like maybe some of you that have followed me for a while might just maybe know that I love reality television. Like I have a problem, and I am admitting to this openly, but I'm okay with this also.
I get a lot of texts.
It's a lot, but I love it. It's great stuff. So like obviously this is right up my alley. And at first, the direction I thought I was going to take with this was simply, it was going to be memes, we were all going to have a good laugh, we were going to go on. And that was like in episode 1, 2, probably. And then as it went on, it just kind of kept unfolding, and it was like, okay, but there's like seriously some things wrong here. There's some things not being said. I just ended up with a lot of questions, and I don't know about you, how you felt about it.
Even on that first watch through of it, because at this point I've watched through it a second time and I'm getting ready to kick off a third time, definitely rewatch it. It's a much different watch the second time than the first time. But yeah, I even remember your first watch where you get involved and be like, oh my god, we've got to dig in this. And yeah, at first it comes off as this almost wacky, zany story of these people are so larger than life, and then you start to really delve into this and you're like, whoa, oh my goodness, there's so much more going on here.
No.
I was promised an exclusive co-host spot. I didn't realize I was showing the camera.
Do you see what you've done to me? Go on. Yeah, it did seem really like, I don't know, at the first glance you were just like, wow, these people are wacky, these people are kind of like out there, but at the same time, like, I find myself asking, who isn't out there? Who isn't wacky? I don't know, I found myself saying, you know, if you edited footage of my life that I have very easily put available to people online to do so with, you could probably very easily make some weird things like that happen and make me look very strange, because we're all a little weird. But anyways, yes, because I didn't quite feel right about this, I did start just looking. We both started kind of just digging around, seeing what more or less we could come across with what was given in the show. And then some meme accounts, more or less, because obviously I was watching them for memes, started to contact Joe and actually get like information out of Joe, including a couple of names. I found one, you found one.
Yeah, it just started to kind of be that almost ball of yarn-esque situation where it's like, oh, this is, wait a minute, hold on, what's really going on here? So I almost feel like the people is a really good place to start with some of this, because this show is chock full of some just very interesting to nefarious. It's Game of Thrones with tigers, yo.
It's Game of Thrones with tigers. Alright, so yeah, the people's a good place to start, and that's kind of where I started in what I'm actually going to present to you guys, because you guys, I found so much, I'm not even honestly sure what to do with or how to unpack everything I found, and so ultimately I decided what was best. We kind of talked about it too, and what we thought, you know, might be the like ultimate best thing to do would be to simply share what we found. Simply share the evidence. We'll give links. As I'm sure you've probably noticed by now, there is a large list of links in the description. If I have to, they might go into the comments. I will post every link to every piece of evidence that I found in this, so that it's just out there, so that it's just open, and everybody can kind of make their own decision about what's going on here, what's wrong, what's right. And yeah, we're going to try our best to present unbiased evidence as well as at some point, I don't know, try to give our opinions, but leave that very secondary, because there's a lot of just hard evidence here that I think people should be making their own minds off of, not simply what you were shown in that documentary.
When she says a lot of evidence, like, I cannot stress enough, a lot of evidence. We started talking about this about 3 days after the premiere of Tiger King, is when we started really like, oh my gosh, like, I found this and you found this, we're starting to get something going here. At this point, we have read hundreds of pages of depositions. We have watched hours upon hours, sending links back and forth, Facebook groups, USDA records. I mean, that list of links is no joke, and hopefully we don't miss anything. If you're curious on this, beware, this is a dynamic issue, and there is so much going on here. What we plan to present today is very factual. We'll have our opinions, like she mentioned, and very excited to share some opinion pieces. We're going to try to keep it as factual as we can.
And for what it's worth, like, I definitely do feel like for more or less we miss things. Like, there's still things out there. Honestly, like, I got so, like, kind of into this and have this so, like, wrapped up in my own head. I kind of just need to get it out at this point. And so I'm sure there is more. There's more that could be found. There's more that will come out. Like, there's definitely more. But as far as a place to start, I think this is a pretty substantially good and fair place to start, and does give a good, at least, view of this for now. So, alright, let's get going. And first, we're going to talk about Rick.
Good old Mr. Kirkham.
Our original, I guess we're going to call him a reality television showmaker, is what he was doing with Rick. And so, number one, I have seen the biggest asked question about Rick be, why do you see his footage in the film if it all burned in the alligator arson? And obviously, I was very curious. I went digging, and I found places that I could literally match footage, and I will do my best to put the picture up here where I found a really good shot of it, where you can still see the Joe Exotic TV logo on it and everything, just like it's on YouTube. And it is on YouTube. And that's a link down below called Joe Exotic TV. And he says it himself, where he says that they did 2 shows, Joe Exotic TV and Joe Exotic Gone Wild. Gone Wild I cannot find at all. At all. It is nowhere on the internet. It does come back up later. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But I couldn't find that one. But I did find Joe Exotic TV, which was a very interesting thing, considering, the whole thing is I lost everything there. Well, it's there. And honestly, like, it'd be one thing to be like, well, this was somebody else doing this. But you're kind of, like, in a lot of it, and you interact with people, and it kind of looks like it. Again, I'll leave everybody to go make their own opinions, but
It was kind of interesting once we found the actual Joe Exotic TV, because there is footage of Rick Kirkham and Joe interacting far above and beyond what you might even be led to believe they interacted with, and to the degree they interacted with what Netflix had to show. I don't know, Netflix makes, at least from my takeaway, there are points where it shows that Rick almost, like, never chived with Joe, and they never really got along.
Right. Thank you for reminding me of that,
And there's just so much footage of Rick seeking out Joe for interactions, of them having a good old boy time.
We'll put the snake one right here.
Exactly.
Where they're having a good old time talking to each other. They make jokes. They exchange a laugh at the joke that they put on the YouTube channel, like.
And then there are several other scenes that, if you take a little time to watch a few of the videos, one of the videos that specifically comes to mind is in relation to when Saf, one of the gals on the show, gets her arm ripped off. There's footage from that day on Joe Exotic TV where you can actually see the various camera crews that are there, and you can see Rick interacting with Joe, interacting with another crew. And, like, this one scene really, like, put into perspective how much we weren't really shown. Because you're shown 3 separate independent camera crews in one shot. If you include the one you're being shot from, because you're being shot from one, and you can visually see in that shot 2 other full production crews making shows about Joe Exotic. And this is, again, long before the premiere of Tiger King, or what would even become Tiger King at this point, as we would understand it.
This is very correct. And yeah, we'll go ahead and throw that clip up here of Joe Exotic and Rick Kirkham actually, like, showably getting along. So.
You got anything else you really feel? I guess another thing that, and we chatted about this at quite length, Rick is a reality TV producer. He has a long history with Inside Edition that is very, very trackable. Type the dude's name into YouTube and you'll find videos of him doing Inside Edition reports.
Inside Adventure was his show on Inside Edition that he personally ran. A lot of us probably saw it because it ran through like the 90s. Was that 90 kids?
Another show that he ran was called TV Junkie, which is a reality show where Mr. Kirkham himself...
That was a reality documentary, but yes.
I apologize. A reality TV documentary where he's the subject matter, being a TV producer addicted to crack cocaine.
And he watches his family and his friends as they, react and handle his drug addiction. The thing about this was, he never told anybody he was doing it. And his ex-wife actually did successfully sue him over it because she was like, hello, I had no idea and I wouldn't. So now, Jeff and Lauren Lowe. Right. I was worried I said that wrong for a minute, but I didn't. Alright, so.
Buckle up, folks.
Yeah. In case I did actually get to cut this out, I didn't think I was going to get anything on them at first because, like, it was so hard to find at first. Like, he did a good job of taking things down. Let's start with that. But first of all, I think that it is pretty common knowledge at this point, so I'm just going to throw this out there for anybody that doesn't know. His great-grandfather did own a circus, and that is Jeff Lowe's bringing into the big cat and wild animal world. Thing is, Jeff Lowe's grandfather sold his circus to Ringling Bros Circus back in the day. Rumors have it that he still worked at Ringling Bros and things were mostly fine, but I don't know all that. I'm not part of that drama.
We couldn't find anything to...
Yeah, it was like literally rumors. Literally. So please take that as rumors. I have no idea. I'm just saying that was a fact I could find, that he did have that connection.
She got the Rona.
I'm ready to go.
With the Rona?
Come here, I'll cough on you. Alright. So.
Geneva Convention? I'm sorry.
Alright. So obviously people have talked about Jeff Lowe being a businessman and trading and doing, I don't know, people say weird things with businesses. Here we go. I found 2 of Jeff Lowe's businesses. Jeff Lowe owned Palmetto Liquidations in South Carolina, which is going down in the description, at their Facebook page. And so is Beaufort Liquidations, which was a flea market. And this is actually the more dramatic of the 2 that he owned, because this is where Jeff Lowe actually did things like cupheading, which at points did get some drama around them simply with the state, not with anyone else, but just...
If I might, that even began at the Palmetto Liquidation site, and that's what led to the evolution. Details they're hazy around this, but there are news stories of him doing exotic animal events out of his liquidation center. What animals were there?
At least out of Palmetto. You can verify out of Beaufort because there are videos.
We're talking about Palmetto specifically here with Jeff. And there's speculation that these exotic animal showings led to sourings with the landlord and led him to closing that and acquiring the Beaufort Liquidations flea market, which is an interesting thing. relatively speaking, because the outdoor flea market was governed locally a lot differently than a closed indoor facility, which this part is mildly speculative, and I probably should have prefaced that. It seems that this was the move to really get Jeff's foot in the door with the cub petting and more get into the exotic animal scene, at least publicly at this point.
I would agree with that, at least from what we can prove of Jeff Lowe's past, which I guess we can go ahead and dive into right here. Did you have more you wanted to add to that real quick?
I'm going to just kind of pin this up real quick, and then we'll circle back to this past, because I say his public involvement with cats very intentionally here. Mr. Lowe ended up in quite the battle with the city over his big cat showings at Beaufort liquidations, and there's some quite interesting footage where he openly admits on the local news that he's out to, I'm going to clean up his verbiage, but mess with a local councilwoman until she lets him do what he wants to do, which is host these exotic animal exhibits, cub petting events, whatever your particular verbiage here is. And that ultimately led to Beaufort being closed down. But now I'm going to bounce it back over to you to talk about Mr. Lowe's history with cats. That's a little pre-public public image, we'll go with.
Definitely pre-public image, Jeff. Well, and as he's saying, at the time when he was in South Carolina, he actually tried to shoot another reality television show, had nothing to do with cats, but if I remember it was family business. That's what it was. And I'll put the picture here. I couldn't find the show anywhere. I couldn't find anything about the show anywhere, except for, like, this article that was about Jeff Lowe that very, very specifically talked about this incident. Anyways, so here's the picture of the show. But here, I was able to find 3 news articles about Jeff and wild cats. And so in 1988, Jeff had an incident with a cougar where the cougar escaped and mauled a dog. And mind you, this was in Michigan, if I remember properly, and hopefully I have the pictures. It was in Lansing.
If I remember correctly, it was Lansing.
And again, I should have the pictures and everything
to
put
double check that.
Links hopefully will be in the description for these 2 below, because, like, I was kind of amazed at this whole article. But anyways, after that, in 1989, not his cougar, excuse me, it was a friend's cougar, attacked him in his basement, and he had to get 40 stitches. From what I read in the article, it was actually pretty gruesome, and he had injuries pretty across his body, and actually, I was able to find Jeff Lowe's first wife's name, which is Kathy Lowe. And she, according to all of this in this newspaper, it was a newspaper article because this was the 80s. Anyways, she claimed that she called this friend and was like, you need to take it back, whatever you can do, you know, we're not keeping it anymore type thing. The thing that I found the most interesting was in 1989, the same exact year as he got attacked by a cougar, his lion got off of his property and attacked a dog. I will say in the first incident of the cougar mauling the dog, they did euthanize that cat. I was sad to see that. In the second incident, they didn't, which I thought was rather interesting. Maybe it's just me, but I find a lion way more threatening than a cougar, but I don't know, personal perception. I guess I live around cats of a cougar stature.
From what I could find in local newspaper clippings and such, it was effectively, the lion is a more endangered species. It wins by, there are fewer of them.
Okay,
Mountain lions are indigenous to the North American continent. An African lion is an African lion.
Okay, I'm glad you can make that make sense. And in case anybody else needs that clear up, we got it. Anything else you wanted to add? Vegas.
Again, like I said, Mr. Lowe has quite the history. More twist than a bag of snakes. My goodness. My goodness, he was fun to look into.
So, there is the case in Vegas that is infamous. It comes up in the Tiger King show. Actually, I was able to find that is more than one account. He was actually using the cubs in a van, or in a bus, I'm sorry. He had them at a house, and then he was also taking them into casinos, which on a second rewatch of Tiger King, it's said, but it's said in these, like, bits and pieces and all chopped up and this and that, and so it's, like, really weird. And so I just wanted to make that really clear that, like, no, there was a massive incident, and if you go look it up, it's super duper easy to find. Like, that one was, like, ridiculously easy.
Yeah, and, like, personal moral input. For a guy that loves cats, it's quite an interesting... I'll shove a baby cat into a suitcase and wheel it around Vegas. Personal conjecture, like I said, but kind of speaks to the man's moral priorities, in my opinion.
One other thing, I'm thankful that you said this. I actually was able to find Jeff Lowe's testimony, I think is what it's called. I'm not a lawyer. I have nothing to do with court. Please forgive me if these words are wrong.
Which one were you talking about?
The one where he was testifying against Joe.
It was either his testimony or his deposition.
Okay, so it's either a testimony. It's either a testimony or a deposition. Who the frick knows? You'll see in the bottom, down there. It is down there. Wow. Yeah, I guess that is an interesting bag of cats in and of itself, simply because he starts to, lead things down one path of how things went, and this other lawyer starts asking him questions and kind of, pushing him, and his story kind of starts to change and this and that, and it is a very, very interesting piece. I simply want it out there for people to make their own opinions.
The deposition.
The deposition.
I remember what you're referencing now.
I know a lot of people are looking for things on... I know people are looking for what's going on. And I wish that I could just sit here and tell you this is what's going on, but with everything I've done and everyone I've talked to, I still have no idea what's going on, you guys, so...
And, folks, the hearsay and the he said, she said, and the allegations and the this groups and the that groups that are all involved in so much of this. If we really wanted to, we could probably research this another 6 months and still not fully have identified everything, everyone, really been, because there's so much. Like, oh my god, there's so much, and so many people involved, allegedly involved, have so much to say that is at times contradictory, corroborated, backed by proof, but then that proof is disproven by real... This is quite an interesting little bag of research.
This is a really quick note on this person. I did find it really interesting that this meme of Mario Trabeau is absolutely true. Went looking, and you'd think with everything we found on everyone else, there'd be something. And no, he's not kidding. His testimony is what he said in court. He did his time exactly like he was supposed to and got out. I mean, I don't really understand, because even as far as his USDA and other records, like, dude, as clean as a whistle. Like, it is amazing.
So now that we've covered the Scarface of the tiger world, who's your next guest?
That would be Doc Antle. Honestly, with the portrayal of the memes, everything, I expected him also to be one of the people who I found the most on. Wow. That was a disappointment.
There's a lot to find.
Yeah, but nothing like
the sensationalized
drama that was put in front of you, not at all. Yeah, honestly, he's telling the truth that his wife passed away at 25 and he never remarried. Or 25 years ago, I apologize. But he never remarried. And, watching the interviews of the actual girls that are working at the zoo now, and the way that they talk and the way that they interact, the story kind of falls apart. And I believe less and less that he's running some tiger sex cult where he's holding all of these girls against their will in any sort at all, or they're unhappy, like, and it's just personal opinion, but honestly, they don't seem to be. They seem to be very there for the animals and very...
One of the things that, like, really started to impress me about, like, Doc and his little group of, like, these women, even his son to an extent, they're all incredibly spiritually, like, guided people. They believe in what they're doing on a very spiritual sense. I'm not going to try to remember the specific branch of it just out of respect, but they're a yogi faith. They're an Eastern philosophy faith that believes in a unified spirit between animals and humans, and all of them seem to be genuine believers of this unified soul. Netflix, I shouldn't necessarily say Netflix.
Yeah.
The makers of Tiger King really portrayed that in a certain light. It wasn't wholly fair just from what we were able to find. They're all incredibly spiritual, friendly, outgoing people. They are very interconnected. But from everything we found, they're all very aware that, yes, he does, date other women. He's a single, unmarried man. That's his business. They're all aware of it. So what? It's not a sex cult. This isn't some weird NXIVM-style club where they're getting branded.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of them do take these assumed spiritual names, but it's by choice, and it's a commitment to their religious faith more than a commitment to Doc Antle, the divine. And one of the things that, like, really I ended up taking particular umbrage with was how they portrayed his relationship with his son. And they used this one quote from his son where at the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, there it is, even his son doesn't like him. Rewatch that scene and you realize, like, that is part of what he had to say there. That is not the whole context. And honestly, everything I could find, they have co-authored theology papers, animal science papers, all sorts of things. They work quite well together. They have a very active working and domestic relationship where he lives on the compound with his father, with these other women, with his wife, or I shouldn't say wife, I can't recall offhand if he was married, but with his partner.
I don't completely remember now.
So this portrayal of almost like this resentful son really couldn't seem to have been further from the truth.
Right, for sure. Definitely. Well, and something I thought was really cool about Doc was that he actually did tiger education. And I know that is overall a part of this, but the thing about what Doc was doing was, and I will do my absolute best to find this again for you guys and leave it down below in the comments or the description or wherever I have to do this, but he actually did it in a country that tigers are native to. And I'm going to take a minute to say this now, but I think that is a really important thing. Because if we can teach people better methods of coexisting with tigers, or better methods of even taking care of tigers similarly to Africa, and having these wild animal preserves that they're more or less contained within, that seems to be a pretty good system that allows them life, that allows them a way to, keep their natural style of living protected, while we also still get to expand and evolve and keep growing as people and as a world. And I think that overall that's important. And so personally, I thought it was really cool that Doc actually took the time to do that. Oh god. That timing though. Alrighty. So now we're into a rather fun person. I didn't like this walking Chucky doll. I'm just going to call him what it is. I didn't like him in the show. I didn't feel right about him in the show whatsoever. And I'm sorry, even for as positive as a person as I am, I really still don't like you. Wow. Wow. If you go looking into James Garretson, you will find a lot. You will find a lot, but the most disturbing thing is something I will attach below.
Mr. Garrettson's the homeboy that you see at the end of Tiger King riding around on his jet ski like some B-roll Bond villain.
Which I will have you know, he does own a jet ski shop in Florida, and that is why that looks like the Florida Ocean, and why he's on a jet ski.
And why he's done all of his interviews since on a jet ski is he's promoting his new jet ski business. Interesting guy.
Which made me
B-roll
really
Bond
interested, because, you know, what are you doing in Florida in the first place? Well, he ran a zoo in Florida. At least I'm about 99% sure it was a zoo. It was called Jungle Paradise. Pretty easy to find. I didn't have too hard of a time with that one overall. The thing is that after finding Jungle Paradise, I was able to kind of trace this pattern. And so there are a couple of documents, again, I'll link below, that are court documents for Mr. Garretson that have to do with charges of cub tiger traffic charges. Oh my god, none of that came out as it was supposed to.
That was some fabulous word soup. Can I get some bread with that?
I got you on the bread. I'm sure I can make that happen next. Charges of tiger cub trafficking. Essentially, he was moving them from state to state illegally. There are certain rules to that. We'll get into that. We'll get into that in a little bit. Anyways, so he was illegally moving tiger cubs around. He was also charged with animal neglect and mishandling. At one point, there is a story in Tiger King about somebody sleeping in their tractor trailer with tigers. I will have you all know that is Mr. Garretson, and you can very easily find this by Googling his name and looking for articles out of Texas. Because he was doing this at, if I remember correctly, a truck stop in Texas, and the whole thing was very, very bizarre because he had this shipping trailer that he had these wild animals in, and they were living there for like up to 30 days, if I remember right, before the sheriffs were like, bro, no. And he claimed that he was feeding them by charging people that would come to the truck stop to take pictures with the wild animals, and then, you know, charge them like $1 or something, a donation, and then they could take a picture and he would feed the animals. And that was a whole bizarre story in and of itself. The last thing I found on Mr. Garretson was honestly the worst of this.
By far.
By far, and the humanist in me really wondered why there wasn't something more done about this one. My humble opinion. But here we go. And again, court documents are below. They are extremely interesting, and I do suggest you read these ones if you don't read anything else. So what ended up happening was Garretson was transferring things around, moving all around pretty much. It seems kind of the thing to do if trouble happens to certain people. They just kind of pop around. So, pops around. He ended up asking a sanctuary in Texas to hang on to his animals. I wish I had kept the name of this place because, wow, the drama surrounding this place in and of itself was kind of amazing. But the thing was that his tigers that were kept there weren't being fed properly. And there are allegations in the court documents, as you'll see if you read this for yourself. His partner in his license says that she was feeding them. She had, I don't know what they are, if they're interns, somebody that works for the zoo or something. I have no idea. She had these 4 people that were designated to be feeding her tigers. And she claims that the girl that the incident...
This is the worst time to get the giggles, but...
it's literally the worst time to get the giggles.
This is far from a funny incident. I
guess it's so uncomfortable the giggles almost make kind of sense, but like...
Yeah. I apologize.
You're good. So... I'm having a hard time even telling it because it bothered me that much, to be honest.
It really is one of those situations so bizarre, like in a way I'm a giggler with just stupidity, and so this one gets me.
Here we go. We're just going to address this like rereading the court documents from memory. So Miss Ammon, she's some sort of partner licensee with Garretson because she couldn't get her own license. She claims that she was the one sending money to feed the tigers back to this place because she's in Florida with Garretson. I think doing something with Jungle Paradise, if I remember correctly. I've done so much research. Ugh. Anyways, she was claiming to send money, but the thing is that, like, there is a month period of time where she's like, well, I sent money, a month prior to this incident, and I sent $1,000. Everything we're shown in this show in freaking research is that it's like $10,000 a month, easily, to feed.
To be fair, that number varies a lot from person to person. I have been able to find some that would quote around the $3,000.
Tigers does say that they had some sort of cattle farm that they were getting pieces from to feed the tigers, but that was running low. There are claims that I told her, there are claims I didn't know. This, that, the other. It's a whole back and forth situation.
The he said, she said.
He said, she said. The point of this situation is that this went, like, gruesomely wrong, okay? And so at some point, this girl, I believe her name is Linda. I feel really bad if I'm getting her name wrong, but she goes to feed the tigers with another regular of feeding the tigers. And for whatever reason, there are allegations for sure made in this lawsuit that those tigers are hungry and needed to be fed. So I will say that outright. Like, that is very interesting to me in light of what happens here. Well, maybe I'm a little opinionated on it, but yeah, it does bother me. It bothers me, but, like,
you've left the people on the edge of their seat for
I know,
a while
my
now,
bad.
so.
My bad. I'm terrible, but it's so horrible. Okay, so I guess what ended up happening was that the tiger, like, got a hold of her pants or something and started wrestling with her, and the description of exactly that part gets kind of hazy, but then the other girl that was there starts describing trying to help her, and then they did talk about the fact that the wire that was used by them to make the fences had holes that were too big. And so that was a part of the issue in this, was that the holes for the wire were too big. So as this tiger's fighting with her, the other girl's afraid she's going to go in the pen, partially. She's trying to pull her back off. And the girl started to slide, and she put her arm back, and her arm went straight in the pen, and they removed her arm. The tigers, being they. And unfortunately, that girl didn't make it. And I think that is what, like, honestly ended up destroying me the most about the situation. At least Saf had, like, a chance after that. She had a choice. She had her choice to say she was mad or to say she didn't want, But that destroyed me. That made it really, really hard. And so I guess we'll go ahead and just jump into this now. But there is testimony available from Joe Exotic in this court case. And I have a link to it below. And in it he talks about the situation with Mr. Garretson. How they knew each other more or less, what was going on. And we're kind of getting into Joe Exotic a little early here, but he ties into this, so we're going to do it. I know I for sure wondered, when the rumors were that he was charged with the lemur, how he was charged with the lemur, because in the show, you're not shown Joe having a lemur. He has,
chimps.
Yeah, he has chimps. I was going to say orangutans, but I'm like, they're not orangutans. He has chimps. What?
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, this is just getting frustrating.
My tablet died.
That was good. Alright. So, I think the most disturbing part of Mr. Garretson was actually in Joe's testimony. Feature below. We'll get back into this in a couple minutes, but I noticed, when everything started circulating in the news and everything, everyone was saying that Joe was charged with a lemur. And I was very confused because I didn't see lemurs. Did you? Alright. At least I'm not crazy. I noticed they were all, bigger chimps, orangutan style things.
Primates predominantly.
Bigger monkeys for sure. And I don't know, I thought it was really weird at first. And when you actually go and look at Joe's testimony, he talks about how Garretson called him and pretty much asked for a favor to give him a USDA license for this lemur, even though the lemur was technically illegally moved across state lines and sold. And the whole thing kind of seems...
It's questionable.
It's extraordinarily questionable.
It was Garretson's lemur, but Joe had a copy of the original paperwork.
Joe had a copy of a paperwork for another lemur.
Maybe. Then, yeah. It's quite a convoluted situation, and at the end of the day, it's not really the clearest why Joe himself is charged with this lemur, quite frankly. But, yeah.
Right. So that's definitely something I was like, well, for all everybody's saying and all the rumors that are coming out that, wow, you kind of might have had a hand in setting him up. That does look kind of weird. Anyways, we're on to two of the people I think everybody really wanted to talk about. And first off, I have Carole Baskins.
I say just get it out of the way.
She's just a very interesting and very unique person. So, obviously, wow, I could find a lot of issues at Big Cat Rescue. I found a couple of USDA violation sheets where they talked about different things like openings in the fences with trees going through that cats could easily climb. There were also just kind of branches and fallen debris on a lot of the fences. More or less minor things for the most part, except for there was a lot of fencing running through water. And a lot of rust on fencing. And just, in general, animals can be a lot more susceptible to things than we are because they're smaller, they have smaller bodily organs. A lot of things can happen, and so it definitely makes me curious, at least me, about some of the issues, but they were even cited in USDA, and Fish and Game wildlife violations for having some of these things going on. Which is, as you look over the years, it doesn't ever look like it really gets any better until, I think, more recently.
Yeah, it seems like things have generally improved at the Big Cat Sanctuary scene at the moment, but Carole seems to be a victim of low-budget construction and high humidity, high moisture. Just cutting corners in all the wrong places.
Yes, definitely agree. There were some interesting violations about Carole, like keeping bobcats and other smaller cats for too long when they were supposed to be in a rehabilitation program without record. From the length of, other things we've seen, even so far, was that really go to say, except for okay. It's definitely of interest and is shown in the documents below. You have anything else really to say about those issues that we were able to find?
Not particularly. It's kind of... None of these people were really running the best thing, but it's kind of the theme in this Big Cat game, especially once you get too many of them, is that is an expensive game, y'all.
Right.
And it all seems that one person might do a little bit better for their enclosures, where their food quality tends to have a drop-off, or the other way. So...
It's kind of like any other business.
Right. One's Walmart, one's Target. You get a little bit of different packaging. At the end of the day, you're getting the same product. And it's one of those very speculative he said, she said type situations. A lot of this, to spoil a future point, a lot of this boils down to, like, there's no formal regulation on a lot of this stuff. There's no, you must. It's very hodgepodgey across the country as to what's legal, what's not, who cares, who doesn't, who's involved, who's not. But we'll circle back.
Which actually is an interesting point into what we're going into, which is Carole's bill, the Big Cats and Public Safety Act, which in all of my research I came across by accident. I literally did. I stumbled upon it, and I thought it was, at first, I thought it was somebody trying to write like a thesis paper of some sort on big cat laws, because it really did highlight the issues in big cat laws in some ways. On the other hand, I thought it was very, very interesting because overall it does look to eliminate the ownership of any exotic or wildlife animals and does not specifically say how it hopes to do so. Not in its methodology, but in the sense it doesn't say that it doesn't plan to shut down zoos or other sanctuaries, and it very specifically does talk about shutting down sanctuaries, which multiple people, very, well thought of people, like people that run the American Zoo Association, people that run a lot of these like wildlife funds, actually go to say that sanctuaries are really important. So I got kind of confused by that whole part of the Big Cats and Public Safety Act, but there's a piece we'll go into later too that will tie back into the Big Cats and Public Safety Act, because I thought it was really interesting that she brought it up, and she had a lot of info on it that even I couldn't publicly find available, and maybe you did, but, yeah, we'll get to that. Kind of at this point, I figure it's a little bit better well known. Carole did have a domestic violence charged against her from this guy named Baykal. He was her boyfriend between Dawn and Howard. Howard was his name. There wasn't really much interesting to be had there, except like they got in an altercation. Yes, there are records of Dawn having tried to too, but really and there's a meme been made about it that, oh, this is just proof society doesn't believe women are capable of murder. I feel so 50-50 on this, because on the one hand I want to be like, yeah, in some ways, like, we definitely don't believe enough that girls can do harm. At the same time, we can't just, say people are guilty because they, act really strange and, do a lot of weird things. There wasn't the evidence. That's how that works, and there's a reason that he's hoping to bring forward more evidence now. Maybe there's a chance. Anyways, I wanted to throw out one quick last thing in case you are particularly interested into learning more about the faux pas or the missteps, particularly behind Big Cat Rescue. There is a site where I found a ton of info, and I found a ton of actually what I felt like was a really useful info that's called Big Cat Rescue Watch. And whoever runs that site, thank you. You are awesome. I appreciate what you've done. Yes, you give your opinions. Yes, there's definitely you're fighting for something you're passionate about here. But at the same time, I appreciated how well you had put together this evidence, and there is a lot to be found on there. So, that's a good place if you are interested in anything like that. Carole is also uploading on her personal channel, I think. I can't totally tell what this is, but again, link in the description. It's just Carole Baskin on YouTube. She's uploading a diary about her life.
It's interesting.
It is very interesting. And I'll say it really quick, but all in with everything that I've done, I appreciated it. I appreciated the overall humanization of the character we were shown. Because at the end of the day, she is just a person that was just raised in situations, brought up in ways, lived through things. Certain things shaped her. Certain things shaped all of them. We'll go to that again in a little bit, though. Because now we got Mr. Joe Exotic.
The Tiger King himself. Here we go.
So, obviously, we talked about his YouTube before with Rick Kirkham. His YouTube is kind of amazing, you guys, and not in the sense of, like, a super, like, positive, amazing, like, whoa, oh my god, but, like, it's a lot different than what you saw on Netflix.
Very, very dramatically different than what was shown of this almost, I don't even know how to describe what they would lead you to believe it was, but this almost redneck shoot-'em-up tiger action bomb show. It's a lot of day-to-day videos of him running the zoo, a lot of actually like very
Vlogs,
educational information, lifestyle vlogs.
The education was insane.
About big cats, about exotic.
That was good. Alright. So, I think the most disturbing part of Mr. Garretson was actually in Joe's testimony. Feature below. We'll get we'll get back into this in a couple minutes, but I noticed, at least I noticed, when everything started circulating in the news and everything, everyone was saying that Joe was charged with a lemur. And I was very confused because I didn't see any lemurs. Did you? Alright. At least I'm not crazy. I noticed they were all, bigger chimps, orangutan style things.
Primates predominantly.
Bigger monkeys for sure. And like, I don't know, I thought it was really weird at first. And when you actually go and look at Joe's testimony, he talks about how Garretson called him and pretty much asked for a favor to give him a USDA license for this lemur, even though the lemur was technically illegally moved across state lines and sold. And the whole thing kind of seems...
It's questionable.
It's extraordinarily questionable.
It was Garretson's lemur, but Joe had a copy of the original paperwork.
Joe had the copy of a paperwork for another lemur.
It's quite a convoluted situation, and at the end of the day, it's not really the clearest why Joe himself is charged with this lemur, quite frankly. But, yeah.
Right. So that's definitely something I was like, well, for all everybody's saying and all the rumors that are coming out that, wow, you kind of might have had a hand in setting him up. That does look kind of weird. Anyways, we're on to two of the people I think everybody really wanted to talk about. And first off, I have Carole Baskins.
I say just get it out of the way.
She's just a very interesting and very unique person. So, obviously, wow, I could find a lot of issues at Big Cat Rescue. I found a couple of USDA violation sheets where they talked about different things like openings in the fences with trees going through that cats could easily climb. There were also just kind of branches and fallen debris on a lot of the fences. More or less minor things for the most part, except for there was a lot of fencing running through water. And a lot of rust on fencing. And just, in general, animals can be a lot more susceptible to things than we are because they're smaller, they have smaller bodily organs. A lot of things can happen, and so it definitely makes me curious, at least me, about some of the issues, but they were even cited in USDA, you know, and Fish and Game Wildlife violations for having some of these things going on. Which is, as you look over the years, it doesn't ever look like it really gets any better until, I think, more recently.
Yeah, it seems like things have generally improved at the big cat sanctuary scene at the moment, but Carole seems to be a victim of low-budget construction and high humidity, high moisture. Just cutting corners in all the wrong places.
Yes, definitely agree. There were some interesting violations about Carole, like keeping bobcats and other smaller cats for too long when they were supposed to be in a rehabilitation program without record. From the length of, other things we've seen, even so far, was that really go to say, except for okay. It's definitely of interest and is shown in the documents below. You have anything else really to say about those issues that we were able to find?
Not particularly. It's kind of... None of these people were really running the best thing, but it's kind of the theme in this big cat game, especially once you get too many of them, is that is an expensive game, y'all.
Right.
And it all seems that one person might do a little bit better for their enclosures, where their food quality tends to have a drop off, or the other way. So
it's kind of like any other business.
Right. One's Walmart, one's Target. You get a little bit of different packaging. At the end of the day, you're getting the same product. And it's one of those very speculative he said, she said type situations. A lot of this, to spoil a future point, a lot of this boils down to there's no formal regulation on a lot of this stuff. There's no you must. It's very hodgepodgey across the country as to what's legal, what's not, who cares, who doesn't, who's involved, who's not. But we'll circle back.
Which actually is an interesting point into what we're going into, which is Carole's bill, the Big Cats and Public Safety Act, which in all of my research I came across by accident. I literally did. I stumbled upon it, and I thought it was, at first, I thought it was somebody trying to write a thesis paper of some sort on big cat laws, because it really did highlight the issues in big cat laws in some ways. On the other hand, I thought it was very, very interesting because overall it does look to eliminate the ownership of any exotic or wildlife animals and does not specifically say how it hopes to do so. Not in its methodology, but in the sense it doesn't say that it doesn't plan to shut down zoos or other sanctuaries, and it very specifically does talk about shutting down sanctuaries, which multiple people, very, well thought of people, like people that run the American Zoo Association, people that run a lot of these wildlife funds, actually go to say that sanctuaries are really important. So I got kind of confused by that whole part of the Big Cats and Public Safety Act, but there's a piece we'll go into later, too, that will tie back into the Big Cats and Public Safety Act, because I thought it was really interesting that she brought it up, and she had a lot of info on it that even I couldn't publicly find available, and maybe you did, but, yeah, we'll get to that. Kind of at this point, I figure it's a little bit better well known. Carole did have a domestic violence charged against her from this guy named Baykal. He was her boyfriend between Dawn and Howard. Howard was his name. There wasn't really much interesting to be had there, except they got in an altercation. Yes, there are records of Dawn having tried to too, but really and there's a meme been made about it that, oh, this is just proof society doesn't believe women are capable of murder. I feel so 50-50 on this, because on the one hand, I want to be like, yeah, in some ways, like, we definitely don't believe enough that girls can do harm. At the same time, we can't just, like, say people are guilty because they, like, act really strange and, do a lot of weird things. There wasn't the evidence. That's how that works, and there's a reason that he's hoping to bring forward more evidence now. Maybe there's a chance. Anyways, I wanted to throw out one quick last thing in case you are particularly interested into learning more about the faux pas or the missteps, particularly behind Big Cat Rescue. There is a site where I found a ton of info, and I found a ton of actually what I felt like was a really useful info that's called Big Cat Rescue Watch. And whoever runs that site, thank you. You are awesome. I appreciate what you've done. Yes, you give your opinions. Yes, there's definitely, like, you're fighting for something you're passionate about here. But at the same time, I appreciated how well you had put together this evidence. And there is a lot to be found on there. So, that's a good place if you are interested in anything like that. Carole is also uploading on her personal channel, I think. I can't totally tell what this is, but again, link in the description. It's just Carole Baskin on YouTube. She's uploading a diary about her life.
It's interesting.
It is very interesting. And I'll say it really quick, but all in with everything that I've done, I appreciated it. I appreciated the overall humanization of the character we were shown. Because at the end of the day, she is just a person that was just raised in situations, brought up in ways, lived through things. Certain things shaped her. Certain things shaped all of them. We'll go to that again in a little bit, though. Because now we got Mr. Joe Exotic.
The Tiger King himself. Here we go.
So, obviously, we talked about his YouTube before with Rick Kirkham. His YouTube is kind of amazing, you guys, and not in the sense of, like, a super, like, positive, amazing, like, whoa, oh my god, but, like, it's a lot different than what you saw on Netflix.
Very, very dramatically different than what was shown of this almost, I don't even know how to describe what they would lead you to believe it was, but this almost redneck shoot-'em-up tiger action bomb show. It's a lot of day-to-day videos of him running the zoo, a lot of actually, like, very
Vlogs,
educational information, lifestyle vlogs.
The education was insane.
About big cats, about exotic, and clips of him in these gratuitously violent activities. They are not the norm that you would be led to believe. Even, like, the outright rants about Carole Baskins are not as prevalent as you would be led to believe, even in what's come out after the fact. I've spent hours and hours combing footage for some of these clips, while she combs an entire segment of other clips, and we cannot, in any way, shape, or form, find duplicate footage of certain things that they said he released in any capacity. I'm not trying to say it's not there, or that it didn't exist. We might not have found
if anybody has, like, the videos where he is,
by
like,
all means, let us know.
overly going off on her, on his YouTube, whatever, like, send me the link. I'd totally be down to see, because overall I am interested in, like, you guys just, like, what is the actual story here? What is the actual truth? Because at the end of the day, like, we're all people. We're all flawed. We're all just, like, beings. There's a bunch of animals in our care, and that's what's more important.
We'll circle back around to that.
We'll get back to that.
Mr. Exotic.
Okay, yeah. As we talked about with Rick Kirkham, there was footage that you could see that was, that almost made him look like they were friends. That made it look like there was a point at least, where they got along and things might have been on some sort of equal path as far as life went. And you see that with a lot of these employees. You can find that with Travis's mom. There's a scene in the Netflix actual production where he shoots his gun off at an employee lady who's dressed in kind of a ranger uniform, like a park, zoo ranger uniform. Anyways, he shoots the gun off at her and, tells her to run. Shoots the gun off at the other chick above her head. That is a full video available on YouTube. If I'm totally able, which I totally should be, I'll find that and put it down below so you guys can watch the entire clip, because it was kind of interesting. Right before he tells her to run, he says something about this being the love of his life's mom or something like that. And, like all the stuff. We were able to find some kind of drama that seemed to be going down at that point, but no corroborations. And we ain't throwing nobody under the bus here. We're just talking about things we could find and improve. So, obviously, none of that. But obviously, it seems to be kind of like a drunken ranting fun. And that laughing and that kind of funny you see her portray in the show is more real than it looks when you clip it out. It's a very interesting all-in show, but video, But you kind of see that too with John Finley, who I feel like there's a point where he tells someone, and I don't remember what interview it is we watched, but he tells someone that he was just told to take off his shirt.
Right.
And when you watch the YouTube channel, dude has his shirt on 90% of the time. He is well articulated. He is, oh my God, compassionate about the animals.
Yeah, there's quite a bit on the Joe Exotic, just to kind of wrap that point up. On his actual YouTube channel, it really recontextualizes a lot of what you're shown on Netflix and adds the full story. At the end of the day, you can make a lot of things happen out of context, but that doesn't always mean that's what it really was in that situation, and his YouTube channel is an object lesson in this. What else have you got on Joe?
Really, other than linking some stuff below, and hopefully you guys will go check out Joe Exotic's YouTube channel for yourself, and I do hope that all in you go check out Big Cat Rescue YouTube channel for itself and make your own decision outside of this documentary, because I think it's a lot better off that way.
I would be careful calling this a documentary. A docudrama. I feel like
edited versions of reality.
Augmented reality.
Augmented reality. That's funny. Okay, true though. But yeah, I guess one of the big things I had wanted to say was that it's really made to seem like in this, at least, you're dealing with the really big players of the big cat world. Like, these are it. No.
Far from.
No. There is a reason there is so many tigers estimated to be in the U.S. and in captivity in other places. And that's not just anything bad, so please hold on and hear me out before we get here. But, there were a lot more of these people than I expected there to be. And there are, quite frankly, bigger people than anybody even shown in the documentary. I'm going to go ahead and do it, but Mr. Eric Goody himself is bigger than anybody shown in the documentary. And he's the director of this documentary. Last and final piece in this is the weirdest, I think, personally.
In my opinion, oh my God, by far.
Okay, so the last and final piece in this is called Zanesville. And you probably are sitting here going, well, what's Zanesville? And at the time when I heard of it and found it through some sources and other things, I was like, what?
And just, Zanesville does appear in Tiger King. It is very...
Where I was going, yeah?
I apologize.
You're fine, go for it.
This is an incident that is referenced in the Tiger King documentary, and it gets maybe a 2-minute blurb about this incident, this little thing. But I apologize. But it is in.
Oh yeah,
it's
been
King.
what's been up here. This is what they gave you, was this little news blurb about how dangerous these exotic cats were and blah blah blah. No explanation. Joe has an interesting video. Carole has an interesting video.
Joe has a whole song about it.
Joe has a whole song about it. That's not a lie. Joe has a lot about it. Joe felt very passionate about it. I will say that. It seemed in ways Carole felt passionate about it. We'll get to that. But overall, that was a weird situation. And if you go look up Zanesville exotic animals, you will absolutely find it. I will gladly link below an article at least to get you started looking in that direction. That was a groundbreaking and ever-changing moment that just from the baseline of reading any article, anybody I think would be like, wait, what? Huh? It's kind of weird. The whole situation is kind of weird. And I get sometimes life is kind of weird and people are kind of weird. I think that's what we're best shown out of this whole thing, but...
There's life is weird, and then there's life is deliberately weird. I would almost venture to say.
Yes. Well, and I'm really not going to dive into a whole lot about it because, in part, I don't have a lot to say about it that isn't just personal opinion, speculation, kind of my thing, but also because he's in the works of his own project on it that I'll let him go ahead and talk about for a minute.
I've got a piece that'll be coming out in the very near future. Can't necessarily make any promises on timelines due to some moving parts in what I'm working on. But I'll be delving into the Zanesville incident a lot more on my channel here in the near future. If any of this has interested you, I really think the Zanesville thing, it caught my interest because it was one of the few and first things that once Joe Exotic found out that this made it big, this is what he said to look into from prison. And for some reason, that really resonated with everything he could have said to look into. Zanesville. And, I've been looking. I've got some stuff in the works on that. If you're interested, shameless plug, jump over to my channel, subscribe. It's very, very near in the future.
His channel will be the first link below in the description too if you do want to go and check it out. So I guess, yeah. I'm going to shut this off for a minute.
Cool.
So I thought we would finish this video out with like an ultimate opinions piece because I imagine that's what more or less everybody wanted, was like kind of ultimate thoughts on things. At least for me, it kind of went back and forth, and at points, I don't know, I expected certain people to be the bad guy or the good guy and things. That's just really not the way this shaped up. Like, at the end of the day, everybody had their bad side, everybody had their good side, and this is people who, in my opinion, were doing what they thought was right, were doing what they thought would be the best thing to do to get their goal done, and that kind of just ultimately affected other people.
That's one of the big, like, I know I've talked with you about this at length, but like one of the big takeaways for me is like, the path to hell is paved with good intentions, and that seems to be one of those big thematic tomes of this story, if you will. I feel like Joe Exotic, Carole Baskins, Jeff Lowe, a lot of these people genuinely got into this because they're passionate about animals, and they thought what they were doing was right. And over time, through bad decisions, bad associations, whatever it might be, mistakes were made. But at the end of the day, these are just people that thought they were doing what was best for them in that situation.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, really, really. And I guess there is an ultimate argument too, you know, of are sanctuaries and zoos actually right or not? And should they be here? And I found this a hard question for myself, at least, to answer very unbiasedly, or even unbiasedly at all, because I've had experiences with both zoos and sanctuaries. In a lot of ways, I do feel like some of the things I said were right. Some of that early exposure to animals, some of those things that I learned, those things I got to do did make me love animals. It did make me feel things that I'm not sure I could have felt if I didn't get to know them as being, I don't know, living beings on such a level of we are living. They can show compassion, they can care, they can give things back more than just a dog can. And I thought that was really cool. You know, I did a lot of zoo programs as a kid. I visited our local wolf sanctuary, and those things did change my opinion as a kid. So that is a hard one for me to be unbiased about. I think it's an important thing, too, though, that, like, in the wild, these animals do kind of, they face an interesting thing at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we are growing, we are taking land, we are moving, we are adjusting what they have. And so, I guess, where do we find the balance of that?
You know, and that's one of those things that, you know, I'm kind of left wondering through this. For a documentary about tigers, it really doesn't have a lot to do with tigers. And that's kind of a problem we're running into, not just with tigers, but with other species. Here on the American continent, we have wolves that have been pushed to the brink of extinction through man's intervention. I'm not exactly the Greenpeace PETA type myself. I believe in sustainable farming. I hunt. I do all sorts. I very much believe in the harmony of nature. But at the end of the day, these are ecosystems that we've encroached on and endangered through our actions, through our needs. And I personally feel there has to come a balance of, we have a certain amount of responsibility in creating the situation, we need to find an appropriate way to handle it. And having this Wild West scene of exotic pet ownership in general in the U.S. is, I mean, kind of baffling. With the amount of legislation and laws and rules of this, that, and the other in this country, we have just nothing federally on the books that really uniforms or brings together in a cohesive way exotic animal ownership.
I guess that's like the most important thing, is that in nothing that we found was there any evidence, at least I can say that I felt. I don't know about you personally. I can say that I didn't feel like there was anything that came forward that was like, no, people shouldn't be allowed. And at the end of the day, we're encroaching, we're changing things. In a lot of countries where tigers exist, there are certain things that exist that just make them not accepting of this species. And very much as to we are wolves, where wolves are a nuisance to our farming population, to other things, and so we just say, well, forget it. There's a reason I got to go to a wolf sanctuary as a kid, though, and that's because we did that here in Colorado, and we didn't have any left. And the place formed to try to be like, wait, they won't be here anymore if we don't. And I do believe, and I could be completely wrong, but I do believe our Colorado ecosystem has seen changes due to that population being diminished and due to the changes that we brought on because we didn't want this negative effect of life. And I guess that just speaks to the balance, but
quite substantially here in Colorado. And for further reading, I'll try to get you a link in time for getting this video up. They did a massive study at Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming with the reintroduction of wolves.
Yep.
And it literally changed the course of rivers. Like, it was quite a profound study that this one species was able to change. Like I said, I'll work on getting you the link because, no, it is a very provable, tangible, short-term impact on an ecosystem, removing or adding indigenous or native species in or out of that ecosystem.
Yeah, and so I guess, yeah, and, you know, before we get too off topic, I do want to go back to this. We kind of mentioned that it's a bit of a wild, wild west, and For anybody that is in the big cat world, that is not at all to insult you guys. That is to say that it's almost not fair to you guys to expect you to care for these animals, to uphold standards that really aren't level or even a fair playing field. When you can do something legally in one state, and as far as, transferring, moving, selling one animal, but it can be completely illegal in another state. I get, we want to leave some ability for places to choose their own things, but at the same time, we have burdened more than just people. And we have seriously burdened people from what I've been able to see. I can't see any reason for taking them. I can't see any reason for us to just be flat out no. And as we brought up, it could be potentially important to be able to actually reintroduce tigers one day, which they have done from the Wolf Center here. So this argument that you can't do that, it is possible. And I guess it's just ultimately the decisions that get made from here. We have the opportunity to choose to push more of our donations, more of our time, more of our efforts into places that are putting things where they belong. Putting education into the countries that actually have tigers. Into understanding why it's important to protect them. Into understanding the mistakes that other places made, so they don't make them again too. That's an important thing to do. We can put money into actually, pressuring our government to, hey, no, just make it, let's say, this is how you should do it. Because then when things go wrong, there's an actual baseline to fall on, and you don't end up looking at Joe Exotic's court testimony and going, but wait, I'm sorry, what? And I guess we're into the opinion piece, so I'll kind of get into this here, but Joe is charged with killing these tigers and burying them on his land. And even in what I could find, it's extremely vague as to why they chose to charge him with this, except for they thought he shouldn't have. And so, first of all, in a very infamous and large example that we brought up, in Zanesville, this happened. The cats were euthanized via almost the same exact method they're describing Joe doing it, as far as choice of euthanization method, we'll go with. And then they're buried in a yard, in the same exact property where they were. There's a case here in Colorado where the animal sanctuary was not allowed to move. Reason as to why I couldn't really find, no idea. They just weren't allowed to move, and so they decided to euthanize all 11 animals that they had on site and bury them on site because they couldn't sustain keeping them where they were. And that was a decision made. As far as I could find, though, not anything came of that ever. Not shit. So as to why that went in on him, and again, as we pointed out, James Garretson. Hello. What happened there?
It's one of those things that, in my opinion, just makes my head spin in the difference between Exotic and Garretson. Garretson's case literally has loss of human life. Joe Exotic has no actual loss of human life, and we're not discussing the murder for hire plot.
Absolutely not. No.
Simply the tigers. And Garretson is able to sit at the end of a Netflix docuseries, riding a jet ski, looking like a Chucky doll with a budget. It doesn't make any sense to me, and just kind of makes me ashamed of our justice system in ways that a man that could arguably be responsible for taking a life, or at least have hand in a life being lost, is free and making a very substantial, comfortable living, renting jet skis to tourists, while a guy with a very comparable, similar past and similar story in life on the, we'll go with the big brush strokes, is sitting in prison. Very interesting. It's very interesting.
Right, and I guess the thing that I will speak to for Joe is that I could find things that Joe actually tried to do good. Provide balance. Which I'm not saying that doing doing good things completely takes away the bad things you do, whatever. His park was a memorial park. He did. And the Gerald Wayne Memorial Zoo is what it was called, I believe. When you go looking for that, you actually find out that they were one of the places that they actually brought the most animals to in Oklahoma. He was a trusted place. There are many gossip rumors floating around on many Facebook groups that Joe and Doc were actually rather close. That Doc taught Joe a lot of what he knew. And that after the first time that Joe had a big, more or less, violation where he self-admittedly didn't know what he was doing, the Doc did come in and help him out quite a bit to fix things up, to make things right. It is something that you do see that I don't feel like was shown, that ultimately, with what he had, he tried to do the right thing. I'm not saying that he did. I'm not saying that any of the crazy things that you are shown, or the murder, mayhem, and madness is not real. At the end of the day, though, these were all people. Doc Antle is a person who, at the end of the day, lived a life, had things happen. Honestly, with the loss of a spouse, that is an insanely painful... I can't even believe how he has gotten through that and managed to become the person that he is. Carole alone, either. Carole did make a change in her life. Carole did, at some point, choose, you know what? I'm going to leave this behind, and I'm going to take things in a different direction, and I'm going to try to live what I think is the right way. And I guess, at the end of the day, that is what we are all doing. None of us know what exactly is right, what exactly is wrong in anything, but we're all trying our best.
No, absolutely, and it's one of those things that investigating these people, really, you said it well, but let's reiterate, these are all just people. They're all people that made decisions, right, wrong, or otherwise. And yeah, it's a wild ride. This whole situation is just so crazy to think how intertwined people's lives can become over similar things. It makes me wonder, in a way, what could have happened if, instead of spending all this time feuding and all this money wasted going at each other, apply that energy in a better way. Be a positive change. Find ways to work together to impact the common good of the cause. And I imagine in their own way they all thought they were doing that, and every single one of them believed that what they were doing was absolutely best. And yeah, very, very crazy story.
No, definitely, I absolutely agree, and I guess in the end of it, I don't have necessarily opinion on who was the good guy and who was the bad guy. Kind of like you said, they're all trying to do their best. They're all trying to do their version of good. And I do think at the end of the day, it's all of our decision to decide what is the good. And I think at the end of the day, it's all of our decision to decide what is the good for the animals. Because people can fight. People can have their disagreements. And at the end of the day, I don't think anybody or anything or any documentary, reality, television, whatever in the world, I don't think that's going to stop that. Crap, I don't think anything will change that. People are just going to disagree and not like each other, and that is how this goes. I agree, though. If this is really about the sake of the animals, at the end of this, we have to drop human disagreements and figure out how to work simply towards that. Figure out how we're going to get that done and make a good place for them with what we have.
Well put. Well put.
Thank you. Well, you have anything else you want to add to this?
I think we did a pretty good job covering most of it. Yeah, I have a little more that, as we mentioned earlier, I'll be unpacking in my video about Zanesville that does tie into some of this and feature some of the same characters. So if you're interested, please feel free to subscribe, follow me, let me know what you think. Be sure to show her lots of love. She's put so much time and effort and pestered me for hours a day over this. She's worked hard and been diligent. It's been amazing to work with you. It has been a tremendous amount of fun to get to collab like this, to get to really delve into this and see what the real story was. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the feature, the opportunity.
Thank you for joining me. And yeah, I can't say for certain if this is the end for me of this. We'll see. Maybe I will end up with more that I feel like you guys need to know. Because at the end of the day, I really just wanted to get it out there. There was a lot that really wasn't said in there. There was a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors, a lot of things that went flying around. The man, that was edited reality and a well job done of it. 90 Day Fiancé is jealous, I am telling you that. Anyways, guess we're gonna sign out for the night, so Dread Pirate Space Bonds with the flow of Let's Think Geek, signing off.